Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, the comic book extraordinaire, Mr. Eddie Lema, introduce himself to our listeners and viewers at home.
Hello, everyone. Hey, JR. Thanks again for having me on. Really appreciate this. My name, Eddie Lema, and I am the writer-creator of the End of Zed comic book. It's my first ever Kickstarter, first ever comic book, so I'm ready to rock. Ready to rock.
All right, and the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, for how we first found them, and we probably met in some sort of den of ill repute, but since we're a family-friendly show, we're just going to pretend you don't know any of that, and we're going to move on and say it was at a coffee shop or something.
There you go. Yes.
Insert family-friendly answer, people. I was in the infantry. What do you want from me? All right. We did warn you, sir, that there are the religion questions. Are you ready for this? There are wrong answers.
Yes. Yes, they are.
All right.
Okay. I heard. Hopefully I'll be okay.
Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Star Wars all the way. Oh my gosh. I probably wouldn't be here without this dude. So yes, Star Wars. Star Wars till death. I mean, gosh.
You froze for a second. We could hear you talking, but couldn't see your screen. Can you show us what you showed me in the pre-show?
Yes, Star Wars all the way. Absolutely.
That is one heck of a desktop decoration.
There you go. Love it. Love it. Actually, he's kind of shaped like my robot in my story, so that's another reason. It's kind of like inspiration, big head and everything, But
I dig it.
Star Wars means the world to me. And listen, I'll show my age. Actually, my brother took me to see Empire. He didn't take me to see Star Wars, which till this day I regret. But he took me to see Empire the first day in the movie theaters, and oh my gosh, I didn't have to. I didn't have to worry about anyone walking out before me telling me that that Darth Vader was Luke's father. So I'm grateful for that.
That would have been frustrating. And spoilers, I guess, but it's like years and years old. And if you haven't watched it by now, people, it's a meme at this point.
You ever see the Simpsons episode when Homer walks out of the theater and he's like, he just saw Empire for the first time and he walks out like, oh, I didn't know that Darth Vader was Luke's father. Yeah. And the whole audience like, oh no, boo, Love that episode. Do you remember that? Yeah, it's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one, but I've seen that kind of thing in real life. Like I took, I don't remember who I was dating at the time, but I took a date out to Titanic when it was in theater. And someone was joking, man, I sure hope this cruise line goes well. And someone else was like, no, it sinks. And someone got up mad. They're like, you ruined the whole movie. I'm like, wait a minute. Are you for real?
Oh, my God.
Sadly, they didn't know the Titanic was real and that it sunk.
Wow. I mean, why are they even in the movie theaters, right? I mean, I guess they thought it was
I got nothing. I just is a testament to our failed education system, I guess.
It has to be the subject. Oh my gosh. Okay. But yes, Star Wars, I tell you, Jay, Star Wars is everything. I mean, it's the first time I could really, when you started hearing about the Force and everything, I literally thought it was real. And so I'm at home, and you ever see those, like when you get spots in your eyes when you're kind of up a little too late? I see like the little spots in my eyes, and I would think that's the Force. And I think I got it. I think I'm
nice. Yeah. Have you seen that one Audi commercial? It was a Super Bowl commercial a couple years ago where the little kid's wearing his Darth Vader costume, and he goes out and he's trying to use the Force, and the dad sees him and he's putting it on with the remote, and the kid thinks he just started the car. I was like, I was totally doing that as a kid, running around trying to use the Force on things. Although probably for the best. If I had Jedi mind control powers, I would have used it inappropriately.
Yeah, we would have gotten in trouble, JR. No, that you wouldn't be here.
No, of course I did my homework, Miss Smith. I didn't ever pay a speeding ticket again either.
Absolutely.
And I got a lot of those as a young man. There's a reason young teenage boys have higher insurance than girls at that age for insurance rates. I was one of those reasons.
I mean, and what do you owe it to, right? The adrenaline's rushing, right? This is the first time you sense some freedom, if you really think about it, right, JR? I mean, it's the first time you're behind saying you can go anywhere you want. So there's no doubt that where you want to go is quickly, not slowly. So,
and then they don't warn young drivers, and this is one of the flaws, I think, of my training in that respect, is how music can affect you. So if you're listening to a really fast song, you don't even realize you're speeding it because you're just jamming away to the music. And before you know it, like, crap, I'm doing 75 in a 55.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And so I've seen the joke about, man, I was just jamming out of music. It does not get you out of the ticket, but at least the cop understands. I'm just going to let that out. So I learned to censor what I listen to while I'm driving.
Now, has
No.
that changed over age or no? Or like, oh, that only happened during teenage years?
At this point, like I understand what insurance is and I have to pay it. So yeah, no, I drive like Miss Daisy's in the car with me.
Okay.
But I also got a lot of that out of my system when I was in the Army. So running convoy escorts, we were gun trucks. Like our job was to protect the convoys, and a lot of times that meant road raging vehicles that were getting too close out of the way, just ram them out of the way.
Wow.
So in my early 20s, I got 2 years of just playing bumper cars for real, and now it's like, okay, been there, done that. It's not as cool. In fact, I taught the unit that relieved me in Iraq. We taught them the combat driving, which we jokingly called Road Rage 101. And after you get to do that, like the allure of doing it back home just isn't there as much.
Wow.
I do think some of it you get out of your system, you know?
Okay. So I mean, it doesn't look as fancy and as sexy as it does in the movies, then, right? Because the movies make it look like it's fun as all heck to just hit anything you want.
I mean, it is fun, but as you get older, you start to think about consequences.
There you go. Yes, like insurance,
like you mentioned, like insurance, or the fact that your insurance isn't going to cover a complete replacement, and you're going to owe whatever on the car and still have to get a new car payment. You know what I mean? So, growing up sucks sometimes.
No, it does.
All right. So because we are polytheistic. Oh, and for the Star Wars question, I grew up reading what they call, I guess, legends now, because it's not canon, but like Rogue Squadron, and all the X-Wing books. Those were like my childhood. Spent in a library, huddled over in the corner reading those. I mean, like I could relate to Porkins, his character. Like, I got him. We understood each other.
That's excellent. So you had a connection right from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's so cool.
And I liked the idea. I mean, obviously, you look at it more mature. Like basically, it was World War II dogfights in space, and from a physics perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But rule of cool will get you everywhere.
But I mean, have you ever asked that question and someone can literally say, "No, I'm actually both, man." Whether it's Star Trek and Star Wars, I can actually prove to you that I am on both sides, or is that impossible? Is that just?
No, I think it is. Like I like some of the Star Trek. So do I. My problem with Star Trek was it felt too utopian, and it's like, oh, we don't have money, we just do it because we love the thing, and that doesn't really work with human nature. Like,
I see.
People have competitive, and so it was just a little too utopian for me. Although, I mean, come on, if you grew up on the Next Generation at holodeck, let's just say we'd all use it horribly, in ways we wouldn't want our mother to know about. And then of course the unofficial Star Trek, which was the Orville. Have you seen that?
Yep. Yes, I did. Yeah.
The very first episode where I think he was the engineer, the curly haired redhead, where he's in the holodeck in samurai outfit fighting an orc. So that's the kind of stuff I'd be doing. So
Love it.
I can see the idea that the holodeck addiction is a thing in that universe.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. All right. Excellent.
I didn't like some of the newer ones. Like I couldn't get behind the one where the Michael, whatever her name was. Like that series didn't do it for me. I didn't watch the Picard reboot, where that was basically the nostalgia ploy, because it was behind a paywall, and just I cut cable to cut my viewing bills, not to nickel and dime, so I'm paying even more for all the subscriptions. So I limit myself to Prime, Netflix, and HBO. I just couldn't justify more.
Sure.
So I haven't watched all of them, but I did read some of the books back in the day. I will say the Borg was a lot scarier in the books than it ever was on the screen.
Yeah, I've heard that all the time. Yep, absolutely. I hear the same thing, and the mind can certainly create a lot more than even what you can see visually, right? So I can understand. Yeah.
And Star Trek: The Next Generation did give us the one person everyone loves to hate, Wesley Crusher. So,
but listen, I love the originals. Like I'm talking about, like the very first Star Trek movie. And I don't know if you remember it, but this is when they opened up with, this is the very first one with Shatner and Nimoy, and they opened up with just the music of Jerry Goldman. And I love soundtracks, and it was just a whole introduction of the Star Trek theme. And I think it went into Leia's theme, Leela's theme. I forgot her name. In the actual first movie, and that was amazing. That was amazing how they just started off with a pure soundtrack. They literally played the whole, Star Trek theme, and then they go into the movie. So I
have you
the first movie too.
I dig the music of the movies. I'm about soundtrack. Like, you still can't beat Last of Mohican soundtrack.
Oh, yeah.
Whew.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's beautiful. And then Braveheart had a good one too. But I've watched. I remember the very first one when they were still kind of black and whitey, and it was when Captain Pike was still the main character leading the ship in the very first ones when they were landing on those. And I liked it. Felt more military in the very first ones. They kind of became something else later, and I dug them too. Don't get me wrong, but
Sure.
Cool. I've watched some of the originals too. The only thing I didn't like was Q. He felt like a cheap plot device that was kind of very preachy.
Okay.
I know some people really love the concept.
I was just gonna say he was very popular, so
I loved. I liked the Enterprise series with Scott Bakula, the Quantum Leap guy that was the captain of the Enterprise, the first one.
Yep.
I liked that one better than all the others. That for me was my favorite series. It felt more real. I like that he snuck the dog on the ship.
Right.
I like all the banter back and forth.
Cool.
The time travel plot. I mean, time travel is really hard to get right, but it gets a little wonky.
He kind of reminds me of Bakula. He kind of reminds me of the Galaxy Quest movie with Tim. Was it Tim Allen? The Galaxy Quest movie. Oh my God, which is like my all-time favorite movie. But there's a lot of connections between the way they filmed both of those. In my eyes, I get the same feeling that I did because Galaxy Quest was just one of the funniest movies I ever saw. I mean, in that particular year, you saw that, right? Galaxy Quest. With
yeah. We're actually going to be recording in the not too distant future a Galaxy Quest panel where we talk about it.
Oh man, that's awesome, man.
I wish they did a sequel, but I don't know if all of the actors are even still alive.
Yeah, right. So, well, Sigourney Weaver is. So you got. Yeah, no, you're right. Maybe some of them are not. Wow. But what would you do?
Well, I mean, you could. They landed back, but they, some of them chose to stay. Some of the fans are like, "Holy crap, this is real." I mean, you could have, even as long as you've got like Tim Allen on board, you could fill the rest of the crew with just like the nerds from the fan club kind of thing, and go back out, and then just do whatever. Like, you could do whatever you want plot wise, but I really liked it. I'd actually outlined a story before I realized it was basically Galaxy Quest, where I thought it'd be cool. Some pacifist alien race comes and they think we've got all kinds of space fleets because all the different sci-fi nerddoms that have space fleet, space commands, whatever, for the org structures for their fandoms, and so they're just kidnapping a bunch of people because they think they're actually like spaceship engineers or whatever.
That is cool. So it's kind of like what did you write that before the movie, before Galaxy Quest?
I outlined it before I had watched Galaxy Quest, but Galaxy Quest came out in what, 96?
I don't know. Yeah, JR. I think someone's looking over your shoulders, man, because that is that's great that you had that idea, because that's hilarious. That was one of my favorite plot points of the whole movie, was that, especially when they came down and the nerds helped them at the end. That was great. By Grapthar's hammer, I avenge you.
So I just looked. Galaxy Quest came out in 99, so that definitely predated my writing that outline.
Okay.
And obviously, you can take 10 authors with the same outline and get 10 different stories, right? So I'm not worried about necessarily writing it. I've just got so much on the dance card at the moment. But I just think that's kind of cool idea.
Real cool. Real cool.
Just because you got all these organizations out there, and then when you get here, like, oh, that's not what we thought it was, and now what? So
love it.
All right, so let's move on since we got bogged down a little bit on all the cool stuff. But Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia.
Game of Thrones, even though I'll say what everyone has told you, JR. Game of Thrones to the last season, right? Is that what you hear? Game of Thrones to the last season.
The last season gave us some of the coolest bloopers, though, like where one where you got that water bottle or the Starbucks cup.
Starbucks coffee.
And I'm not even mad at it because, like, you've got someone whose whole job is to go through that, and it went through several edits, and they still missed it.
Yeah.
And I've seen books like that where I know it's been through 4 or 5 edits, and that one misspelling made it through every one. And like sometimes, that little mistake just wants to be there. And so I just thought it was funny that you've got the Starbucks in Westeros, or the plastic water bottle.
No, I never seen the scene. Was it in Westeros? Was it when they were eating? Like, do you remember what scene? Because I never got.
I don't remember. I just remember it was they were in a field tent kind of deal. Okay. I haven't actually watched it.
Okay.
So I generally have a rule. I don't want to start if a series was in book before it was in film. I'll read the book first. If it was film first, I'll watch the film and then read the book.
Okay.
But I know we're never going to get an ending to Game of Thrones. George Martin is never going to write that.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to set myself up for disappointment. And at that point, I didn't have HBO. Now that I do, everyone is like, "Oh, the ending sucks." So I torture myself. There's so much else out there that I like, and grimdark really isn't my thing anyway.
Right.
I prefer hopeful. Like I don't mind a dark setting. I just want like the chance of a better future at the end of the series, at the end of the book, and I don't want that bright light at the end of the tunnel to be the train about to run you over.
Right.
I want to know that there's hope at the end, because otherwise it's like, I mean, I could just watch the news if I want to be depressed.
Right, there you go. Absolutely, I hear you, especially lately. But with Game of Thrones, I would tell everyone, if you really hated the last season, I could understand, in particular the last couple episodes. But if you rewatch it now, a couple of years after it happened, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was initially. I think I had a lot of emotions going into it, and a lot of people do. Any season-ending thing, whether it's Seinfeld or The Sopranos, you all have these preconceived notions of what it would be, and especially if you're really connected to it, you have emotions connected to it. So now that your emotions are a little bit distant through time from that last season, last episode, give it a watch. It's not as bad as we probably initially thought. At least
I've seen a cool breakdown of it. There's a podcast that used to be on. I don't know if it's still out there, but it was called the Angry Staff Officers Podcast. It was literally staff officers in the Army. So it's the rank of major. They're generally angry because they go from being able to do their job to desk jobs, and they don't really want to do there. And they're sort of stuck there before they can go back to commanding a larger unit and doing their job again.
Cool.
But they had a podcast where they were like breaking down all the logistical issues with that show, and the tactical mistakes they made. Like, why would you do this? Why wouldn't you do this? And it was definitely fascinating breakdown. They did the same thing for Rogue One.
Okay.
Where they broke it all down about why it never would have worked. And I thought it was hilarious.
I mean, did it make sense? I mean,
it did. It was all about the logistics. Some of the decisions that were made. Okay. Like, if you've got a castle behind you, why don't you hunker in the walls and let them batter themselves against them? Like, for instance, or the supply trains that they abandoned, or like, there's a lot of it. It's been a couple years since I've listened to that episode,
really cool.
But yeah, they broke down all the military mess ups in that show,
and they would know. They would know in terms of what the order of how things should work. That's awesome, man. Yeah.
There's that old quote, something to the effect of, amateurs talk. Was it? I'm gonna draw the blank, but basically the end point of the quote was that professionals talk about logistics because that's how you win wars.
Right. Okay. I'll gotta check that out. That's cool.
All right. So, what is it specifically? Oh, the quote is from Omar Bradley during World War II. Amateurs talk strategy and professionals talk logistics.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
But so what is it about Game of Thrones that speaks to you?
Well, I love the whole thing with all the families, right? The family conflicts. I think we talked about it before, JR. I think all these stories are really derivative, right? I mean, if you look, there's only just like music. All of great music consists of maybe just 4 or 5 chords and just played in different orders and different things. So same with stories. And so I can equate, Game of Thrones to The Godfather, the conflict of families and power and who's going to be the next in succession. So that's what I love about the base story of families and all these families trying to fight for the throne. Then, of course, special effects. And then the dragons were always the best part of it. And we kind of got really spoiled with the last iteration, House of Dragons, because we see dragons every second on that show. But if you remember back to the Game of Thrones, it took a while. They peppered in the dragons every once in a while. And boy, when you saw them, your mouth dropped. This is amazing. And so, and you anticipated that, yes, when the giant battle at the end and the ultimate fights, you can actually see these dragons in action. So I think the dragons were certainly something that I was really, I was overcome with, especially as they kept, introducing them as they kept getting bigger, and then they become a bigger plot point in the stories. It was excellent.
Yeah, you can't really go wrong with dragons.
Yeah, no, not at all, not at all. And especially in House of Dragons, really, gosh, they really took it to another level. Aren't dragons cool? I mean, just look at the way they look, I
mean, I grew up reading Pern, so the Dragon Riders was something I read as a young boy. Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. preteen, I think, when I read that. So yeah, I dig the concept of dragons. We had Pete's Dragon when I was really little,
Of course.
which was like part cartoon, part regular film.
Right.
And I remember that was cutting edge technology back in the day.
Yeah. And then what about the dragon one? Well, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. The DreamWorks dragon one. They made a couple of them. Dragon.
How to Train Your Dragon.
There you go. How to Train a Dragon. That was excellent. It's one of
I
my
watched that with the
favorite
kids.
movies. Yeah.
I liked that one too.
Yeah.
We used to watch it when it was a series, and I liked that it was kind of irreverent but funny and age appropriate. So yeah, we watched that one with the boys. So yeah, for me, I guess Game of Thrones is too grimdark. Wheel of Time, I just couldn't get into the writing. I tried. The prose just didn't do it for me.
Okay.
I mean, I recognize that lots of people love it. I'm not yucking someone else's yum. Robert Jordan wasn't doing it for me. Chronicles of Narnia on that list would be my choice. We used to have Lord of the Rings, but that was everybody picked it, so it's kind of unfair.
There you go.
If we're going old school fantasy,
picked that too.
but I also liked all of the Sword of Shannara books. I don't know if you read any of those.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, Stones of Shannara, and those were amazing. I read those as a kid, and then I even watched the TV series, the adaptation of it that I want to say Amazon Prime did, but I could be wrong on who did it. But it only got one season, and of course I liked it, so it got canceled.
So what was that one show, JR, that they canceled that you wish they didn't? Would it have been that one?
If I was going for only one, I don't know. That's a tie between Terra Nova and Firefly.
Okay.
But at least Firefly, we got Serenity. Terra Nova, we got nothing but a giant, plot hanging, non-answered. I'm going to try not to cuss.
Right.
I love Terra Nova, but it was on Fox Entertainment, and Fox Entertainment is where good shows go to die.
Yeah.
I've ranted about that a lot, so I'll save you. But there's a special place in hell for whoever canceled that show, and I know why they did. It was expensive to make because you had dinosaurs in every episode, and I'm sure it was like CGI and all the whatever they had to do for that.
Sure.
Did you watch any of those?
No.
So a
lot of my colleagues have, though, and my colleagues would always speak of it at work. Yeah.
The basic premise, if you haven't watched it, is Earth is too polluted, so they try to go to back in time where Earth's not polluted, but once they go back in time, they change it, so it's technically an alternate dimension, and it's alternate dimension where the dinosaurs were still roaming, and then they get there and they have to survive and thrive. And then, of course, the underlying plot hook is, but other people were there first, and there are people trying to sabotage it, and it ends with proof that other people had been there because there's like a ship on its side in the desert or whatever. And I'm like, there's supposed to be season 2, give us answers to that question, and we got nothing.
Never happened.
Never happened. So, oh well. I'd even settle for the books. I also liked Stargate Universe that didn't get renewed, and they promised us we'd get answers with the graphic novel. So I spent like top dollar to buy it on launch day, a physical copy of the graphic novel, and it too ended in a cliffhanger. Those sons of biscuit eaters. I mean, I was just hoping for answers, like what happens. I liked the premise. I liked that it was gritty. I recognize why others didn't, because they wanted campy and gritty. All like, well, it's just Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
But I hadn't actually seen those Battlestar Galactica episodes yet. I've seen some of the original at the time, but not the reboot.
Yeah.
So I can see, having seen both now, I can see the comparison. But I really dug it. So.
I mean, in a lot of cases, though, we don't really know sometimes the real reason why shows get canceled and don't get picked up again. Yeah, we could always say they just weren't popular, or the audience didn't connect with them. But sometimes there's a lot of underlying political things you don't even know about. In terms of direction and things like that.
The other part of that is a lot of the shows we're talking about came out in the upheaval where live viewing was transitioning to people DVRing things. And for you young folk listening that don't know what that is, it's digital video recording. And you could say, hey, record this episode. I'm not going to be here to watch it. And then you could come back and watch it live later. But it didn't count those as far as the Nielsen TV ratings. Right. And then even worse, because it was on Fox, they played on a Friday. So whenever the football game went long, instead of recording the show, if the show started late, it starts late, it recorded that hour block. Which would be like the 9 to 10. And if the football game didn't end until 9:40, you got the first 20 minutes of the show, and the rest you're just SOL.
Oh, God.
And so it made it really hard to get a following because it was just so poorly managed. that it's hard to say what would have happened if they'd shepherded the property better. And that can doom a show almost as much as bad writing and acting.
That's a good point. I mean, I think we might have to start telling the kids now that there was a time where when your show came on at Thursday at 8:00, you had to be there. And if you weren't, well, you were SOL. and that was every show.
Yeah, that heart-thudding run to the bathroom or to pop your popcorn on commercials because you couldn't pause it. You had to be back in time.
Yes.
Like, they don't understand that. Or the race home when the streetlights came on because you got to be the streetlights home or your mom's going to get you.
Of course. No, everything is foreign to them now. My gosh.
Yeah, I remember where we'd be playing in the street. It'd be like, car, and then you rushed off to the side to interrupt your game. And then when the car passes, game on, and then everybody runs back in the street. And now you drive through a neighborhood and it's like a ghost town. Nobody's outside.
No, because these video games are too good, JR, man. I don't blame them, man.
Yeah.
I'm a World of Warcraft freak, so I could see why. If I had World of Warcraft when I was 13, 14, I would be hunkered in my room as well too. These games are.
Yeah, and it's funny because like when you watch some of the post-apocalyptic movies or when we were in Iraq and the village was suddenly quiet and empty, like something's about to go down, and you could almost hear like the eerie music soundtrack. But now it's just so normal, like that's not going to have the same effect anymore. And scary because that's just normal for people.
Gotcha.
But so, did you watch the World of Warcraft movie?
Yes, and I was disappointed, JR. I was disappointed. Because I've been playing the game for decades, and isn't that, how many of us can say that you had a game that you've been playing for like over 20 years? Because literally, I have. And so I was really had high expectations of the movie. One great thing about the games, they have all these different classes and you have all these different races, and so I was really looking forward to them kind of touching more in on that, at least at the end of the movie. I understand they were touching more on the lore from the beginning, but there was none of that, and the story was a little weak. The special effects weren't all that great, so I would say I was disappointed. Have you played World of Warcraft?
I have not, and I know people that did. I had no expectations going into the movie because I never played.
Okay.
I'm more of a Xbox gamer than PC. I know the PC Master Race crowd is going to eat me alive for that one. I can already feel the emails coming in, but so I never really got into World of Warcraft.
Okay.
But when I watched the movie with no expectations, I mean, it wasn't a bad movie.
Okay, good.
Good plot. I wanted a sequel to find out what happens, like the sacrifice at the end of the chick who becomes the orc lady that was the whatever. Like, if you didn't know it was a World of Warcraft and you just watched it as a movie, it's good.
Right, you're right. I think you're right there. I think it's just too personal in terms of what that game has meant to me and still means to me to a certain level. That it's a lot more home. You feel like it's a home kind of thing. This movie should have came from my home because I know everything about it, and it just didn't connect that way. So, but yeah, no, it's still a game, so it didn't deter me from playing.
It's one of those games that built a cult following around it to the point where, or not following, like maybe that's not the right answer, but it built such a community around it. I mean, I know people that got married because they met when they guilded together, like, hey, you seem kind of cool. Let's meet in real life. And they were like halfway across the country, but they decided to take a train or plane or automobile or whatever. And before you know it, babies are being born because they met, going through, whatever the kingdom in Azeroth, I guess, right?
It was correct. It was a phenomenon, Jared. Because I got to tell you, I don't think there's any game that you could. What they did was about 5 years ago, they took out the first iteration of the game that came out like 15, 20 years ago called Classic, called Vanilla. And they got just as much people that came back in the millions to play the game. So imagine coming back to a game that you played 20 years ago, right? And you still paid the same amount of money and you still got addicted to it. And it was a phenomenon. It was an experience. World of Warcraft is an experience, that's for sure.
You've probably sunk as many hours into that game as I have into Skyrim, and I understand your pain.
Okay, nice.
I have, and I've got the classic RPG on the console thing where like I have so much fun on the side quests, just roaming around doing whatever the hell I want to. Right. That by the time I get back to the main storyline, my character's like a level 25, and this dragon that's supposed to be really hard to beat when you're level 2. Right. And I one-shot it, and I'm like, maybe I should have done this part first.
Well, tell me, Jerry, what's the longest you've ever played that game in one session? What's the longest you played Skyrim?
Probably 14 to 24 hours when it first came out.
Yep, me too.
I played almost a day straight. I just don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was addicting. I had a lot of fun with it though.
Yes.
My kids have played it with me now. When they would play it, we had this thing where we would, when we were starting new characters, when the wife would be like, "Hey, it's time to stop the game, come eat dinner," and we'd have this thing where we would save it, and then we would go and we'd take turns. And the deal was, once it's saved, you have to go into one of the towns and fight the guards until you die, and whoever lasted the longest wins. Of course, eventually your character gets so hard that the guards are no challenge in the city.
Of course.
But because of the rule was you couldn't use any health potions, and you couldn't change weapons, whatever you started with. So you just, whatever you guys, when you start the fight, you go in. Okay. And we would have fun with that for hours. Cool. We would just go back and forth. Like, it's something, I don't know, like sitting side by side with people and just enjoying the moment. But I also remember like Halo LAN parties in college where, we'd be doing our thing, and then you run out in the middle of a break and be like, "You son of a, camping SOB." And then of course everyone was trying to be the first one back to the room so they could get back on the computer to, take people out before they were ready. Like it could be bonding. I get it.
Of course.
It's its own world. And we, of course, World of Warcraft, though, it gave us the iconic Leroy Jenkins.
Of course, Leroy Jenkins. Or what about the South Park episode?
I haven't seen that one.
Oh my God, that show, the South Park episode of them playing World of Warcraft, is credited for a lot of people actually joining the game because of it. So it is one of the funniest South Park episodes, and it's about that. Yeah, they start getting addicted to it, and oh my God. I will guarantee you, JR, that's one of the best South Park episodes you've ever seen. I'll give you a guarantee.
I watched the one. They did the one about freemium games where it's free to play, but you got to pay to win.
Right.
And they were mocking the Game of War, which had come out, and I played that from the beginning on my phone and tablet. I got lots of hours into that too. In fact, there was a guy that got arrested because he embezzled millions of dollars from his company to then put into the game, so he could, be the baller in that kingdom. And I played against him, and I'm just thinking, if I'm going to jail for embezzling millions, I want to say like hookers and blow, right? Like I want to have a story. To say I spent it on little pixelated, characters on a game. I'm just like, that guy had a problem.
Oh, so, I didn't even hear that. So holy.
Yeah, there was a whole thing where they caught somebody going to China that had worked for the company stealing the code because they were going to do a clone of it and knock off. And those games like that, they started off where, $5 here and there, and you could be a baller and have some fun.
Of course.
And before you knew it, people were spending hundreds of dollars a day. Yeah. And I just at a certain point in time, they ruined themselves because you become an arms race and you realize at a certain point in time, you can't win. You can't afford to win. And it drives away. So the MMORPG, the massively multiplayer part, if you get all the normies who aren't going to spend millions on their game out because you just pick on them because you can,
right?
And you lose it, and eventually all you guys, those 3 titans sitting in a kingdom, are like, I spent too much money on this power. I'm not going to let you go.
Yeah, sure.
And so, but I met my best friend playing that game.
Oh, cool.
On the phone, and we're like, hey, we got a lot in common. And I sent him, my phone number, and we talk still to this day, a decade later.
That's cool. Well, that's the negative part of pay to play, though. The negative part when you pay to play, it could really corrupt games.
It can, and then the loot boxes do the same thing.
Yeah.
In some of the games, but what those games do is they will bring people together who might not have otherwise met, but you find out people have a lot more in common with each other than they have counter to it. But if you don't find ways to get out of your bubble, you might not ever know that.
Okay.
I would say that's one of the experiences I got from being in the military, because you met people from everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
From all corners of the world, and sometimes all corners of America, and sometimes other parts of the world. Because I've served with guys who joined the Army to get their citizenship, and more power to them. I don't fault them for that, but it's an experience that very few things in the modern world will give you about meeting diverse, and not just because they look different, but actually diverse ideas, diverse backgrounds. In the true sense of the word, and not the modern interpretation of it.
Right now,
you might have never met. One of the guys I served with came with a silver spoon in his mouth, and Daddy cut him off because he wrecked his third Beamer drinking and driving. So he enlisted, and I'm like, I never would have rubbed shoulders with that guy. I couldn't afford to. the beer at the place where he was drinking, right? Like
Right.
we were just not in the same class of people. And the military does that, right? It forces you together. Well, you get the same effect, I think, in those games, the World of Warcraft, the Skyrim. Skyrim a lot of times is single player.
Mm-hmm.
But any of the multiplayer online type games that build community, you get that same community.
Of course.
And you might be talking to someone in India or China or Istanbul or whatever, right? Like, and that's the beauty of speculative fiction is kind of ascending national and economic boundaries.
Correct. And at the end of the day, I think you probably found in your experience, JR, when you're around so many diverse people, diverse cultures, and that at the end of the day, you kind of figure out that we're all kind of the same. That really, there's one or two or three central things that are in our lives that we can all connect with. Love, family. It transcends all those things. Yes, correct. So it's a beautiful thing. You're right, and it's unfortunate that some people may be ignorant to that, and some people may need to experience that to kind of learn that firsthand. But that's certainly what I've learned in my life, JR. Certainly the more.
Yeah, I've learned. They say math is the universal language, but I really do think it's sports. When I worked in the Army, because I was overseas and it was the Allied nations, and so we're not going political about the war people, but I met people from all over the globe that sent troops. And you would think, math would be, because in theory, that's the universal language. But we were talking about rugby and soccer. That's the two sports that's global. Yeah, and so, like, some people in the U.S. cared about American football, but mostly soccer is played globally and rugby is played globally. And, you get people, if you reach some of the other countries, like we dealt with a unit from El Salvador and we didn't really have much in common. So I'm like, so how about those All Blacks? And suddenly we're talking sports, right? Yeah, so if you don't know, dear listener, the All Blacks is a New Zealand rugby team because the American team is not very good. So if you want to root for a pro team, kind of got to look overseas. But I'm biased. I played in college and I played a year semi-pro.
Oh, cool. Oh,
they paid us. They were going to pay us in 2005 money. It was going to be like $25 a game, which would have gotten you a lot farther. Or all the beer you could drink for the
Let me guess what you picked.
We picked the kegs because it was from a local brewery. Looking back as an adult with a more mature, I was an adult then, but with a more mature palate, I'm like, now I know why they were giving us that beer for free. It sucks. I just think even at 3% interest, because I played 100 games, like 100 matches, $25 a game. If I'd put all of that in just a 3% interest load interest bearing account, like I should have taken the money, but at the time, right, like you think you're gonna live forever. But all right.
We could do that with everything. We can go back and look at everything and say we could have probably made a better decision. So don't rack your brain over it.
What's that old T-shirt? It's like no cool story I ever started with. So I had a salad for dinner or whatever. The expression is like it's the fun stuff that gives you the stories you want to tell people. Living life instead of being a little too cautious.
Yes, sir.
So, all right. So we got to wrap this, the introduction part up because we've gone long and this has been fun, but I do want to talk about your Kickstarter too. So one of the crying shames of growing up and becoming an adult is no one asks you the important questions anymore. So we are bringing that back. So what's your favorite dinosaur?
Gosh, you'll probably cut off the show after I say this because everyone says it. How can it not be T-Rex or Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? I mean, it's menacing and certainly, and think about how when you first learn about dinosaurs, I know with me, it didn't really start off with the T-Rex. It's Triceratops, all that. And then they saved T-Rex for the end, whatever book it was. Why? Because that was the jam. That was the all of be-all. So yes, it's T-Rex. And then certainly Jurassic Park reinforced that, how kick-ass the T-Rex can be,
Yeah, and Jurassic Park also gave you the hybrid dinosaurs that were made popular. And of course, that one liner from Ian Malcolm that's you spent so long thinking about whether you could do something, you didn't think about whether you should.
Right.
And that is just,
yeah.
I'm just jealous Michael Crichton thought of it before I did.
I love it.
All right. And because you are a comic book artist, Nick was supposed to be here. His plane had a layover issue, so he wasn't. But his question, because you do comics, and this is a comic Kickstarter, what is your third favorite superhero?
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess, yeah. So just give you the third. Don't even give you the number one or number two, right? Well, I'll give you number three. I have to say, when I first got into comic books, JR, was I love the artwork. And so me and my buddies, about 10, 11 years old, we'd always buy comic books. And if I could be very honest with you, at that point, I never read them. Never read none of the comics. It was all purely based on the artwork of the cover, and I loved it. But he was really fascinated with a comic book called Rom. And I don't know if you ever heard of Rom. It's written by like Bill Mantlo. And he says, you got to read this story, dude, because you're missing out. I understand you like, how Wolverine looks on the cover with his just, blades coming up, and, you love the Batman covers, but read it. And so after I read the Rom series, that I was hooked. So Rom is, I would say, is definitely it. And then as far as the indie scene, I was lucky enough that, I was around when the Ninja Turtles came out, even before they were like an indie comic. And so that always fascinated me. I thought that was cool. I love New York City. I love pizza. So gosh, what better combination than you get than that, other than Kung Fu. That too. So yeah. So I would say yes, to answer your question, it's definitely Rom. If you know anything about him, he's like the Space Knight, a robot,
Okay.
Yep.
I will see if I can't find a link to your listener so you guys can check it out. Make a note to myself.
Sure.
Some of the episodes we've talked about certain books that we've come up, and I've just decided to start trying to link to them so people can check them out.
Very cool.
All right. So I guess for me, the first place I found comics is I played Little League Baseball like most people. And so you have the ballpark food and the candy store they sell there. And I remember times where my parents would want to go on a date. So they'd be like, just go to the ballpark, here's some money, eat your nachos or hot dog or whatever, and then come home and, we'll see you later. Because this was the latchkey kid era where no one's going to call the cops for a kid, who's old enough to take care of themselves actually being left alone. And so, of course, I would always get the Bazooka bubblegum. If it didn't break your teeth, it would last forever if you get past the initial bite. But it also had a comic in it. And so that was my introduction to little folded, 1 centimeter square, whatever it was.
Bazooka
Joe. And it had one of the best panels that I still remember. And Bazooka Joe's sitting in driver's head. And it's like, so, if your brakes fail on the highway, what do you do? And of course, the right answer is to let up off the gas and pull over, right? Okay. That's what they teach you in driver's ed. And his answer was try to hit something cheap. And I thought about that. And the more I think about it, I'm like, dude, that was on to something. If you're going to crash anyway, make sure you're not going to break your bank, right?
I love it.
Avoid the Porsche, hit the Pinto. Right.
And in the script, do they show you him running into something, or they just
no, it ended, but I got the impression Bazooka Joe probably had actual proper comics, and so these were just little snippets.
Right. I remember them. Yep.
I don't know that I ever really read them. I did read some of the Archie comics just because my grandparents had them, but those, as a boy, they were kind of hard to get into. They just seemed kind of cheesy.
Yeah.
I preferred the action adventure stuff.
Sure.
So I never really got into comics. The other part of that is, even when we were kids, they weren't so cheap that it was like, I could get a comic book and, I get this and I'm done with it in 20 minutes reading it, or I can buy a novel at the same price that I'd get hours of reading out of. So for me, from a mathematical perspective, the books won every time.
Yeah.
Sure. But I can appreciate the art. I can appreciate the lore. The hard part of that is a lot of those have been around so long. Yeah. Like, where do you start? What is your reading order to make it all make sense?
Sure, correct.
And that can be an issue if you don't really know, if you don't have people into it that kind of coach you along the way.
Correct. But you figure online now, you could probably find a good way of finding that,
Yeah, but that wasn't around when I was a kid. Like the internet.
Yeah, correct.
I remember when people were getting second house lines so they could have their dial-up internet without getting disconnected, and AOL was that. You sacrificed robots to the internet lords.
I loved it. Oh my god!
And then one phone call, if you didn't have the dual lines, right off the internet, halfway through downloading whatever.
Of course.
Downloaded music you probably didn't pay for.
Oh my god! Well, don't go there, JR, because oh my gosh, that was the biggest.
I was in college when the Napster thing,
LimeWire and Napster first came out.
Well, lots of people had their lives ruined because they downloaded that stuff. They made poor decisions, obviously, but whew, that was a scary time. You're like, wait, somebody gave me music. Did they get it right, or am I in trouble? All right, so because this is the spooky season, because I'm going to air this as soon as we're done, because the Kickstarter is live now, and obviously Kickstarters are only around for 30 days, I think is the general rule.
Yep.
What is your favorite Halloween candy?
Well, actually, I was listening to this earlier, and I tell you what, it's not, and everyone's going to tell you that it's not candy corn. But then I heard that you like candy corn, so you want to know something, JR? You're the second person I know my whole life that likes candy corn. That is just amazing. So just doing this podcast alone, just knowing that you like candy corn, I met the second person ever in my life to candy corn. That's the only reason I did this show, so I'm going to leave now. Goodbye. But nice to meet you.
This has been. I was surprised at how many, because for a while people would make jokes about it. It was right up there with those peanut candy that just tastes like you're eating styrofoam. That other people hated as well. And then I've met lots of people through this podcast like, oh yeah, candy corn is our favorite. Like, oh, there are normal people out there.
Well, next you're going to tell me you like black licorice. Do you like black licorice?
Oh, no.
Okay,
no.
There you go. Because that's normally, because the person who did like candy corn that I knew also liked black licorice. So I was like, okay. So
I can't stand black licorice. Yeah. All right, so Team Red Vine or Twizzlers?
Twizzlers. Oh yeah, absolutely. And by the way, my favorite candy, by the way, is I do agree with you with this, is Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. Anything with chocolate and peanut butter. You remember those commercials with the chocolate and then the peanut butter gets in there and like, oh no, you put my peanut butter in your chocolate. You put my chocolate. Yeah, anything Reese's, I love. Reese's Pieces, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, you name it, I love it.
Yep, the Reese's is. I like the Reese's Pieces peanut butter cups, but I also like their the M&M thing they do. I forget what those are called.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, where they put the M&Ms like on top of them. You mean? And it's part.
Well, it's shaped like M&Ms, but it's got the peanut butter inside.
Oh yes. Okay. Yeah, I forgot what they're called. I know what you're talking about though.
So yeah, I like those too. But yeah, so if I'm going for chocolate, I'm like Reese's Peanut Butter Cups all the time. But I also like the Mike and Ike's for if you're looking, and I'll still eat those sometimes if I need a sugar rush to keep me awake when I'm up against the deadline. Unfortunately, calories are a thing, and I don't lose them as fast as when I was in my 20s, so I use that sparingly.
I hear you. Me too.
All right, and finally, we are civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So, coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
Coffee. Favorite coffee is Bastilo, which is like a Colombian coffee. It's more of like an espresso than a coffee. But yes, I cannot live without coffee. It's so funny, my doctors asked me, how many cups of coffee you drink? Because he thought my blood pressure was high. I said, I only drink 2 cups. He goes, oh yeah, bring in those cups. I brought in cups like this. He goes, okay, they're literally like 8 cups you're having, mister. So don't give me that one, So yes, coffee all the way, man. Coffee all the way.
There's one of the indie music bands. They do like folk music that I like. They have a part of their intro because they're all about the coffee too as a family. And the dad was an Air Force guy, so they started playing music to bond because they were moving so much that it's hard to find friends that stuck. So they were all close in age, so they just whatever. And they show one of the singers. She's like pouring coffee into a cup that's all dainty and prim and proper cup, and she sets that down and then picks up and starts drinking it out of the pot. And I'm like, those are my kind of people.
Oh, that's it. Love it. And so, majority of times black. I do like black coffee. I think black coffee definitely gets me going because you could really.
I prefer it with cream in it, but I'm learning to appreciate black because I do like the caffeine. I do like coffee. I just don't like the calories. So it's a balancing act.
And I'll tell you one thing, JR. Hopefully, Keurig isn't like sponsoring you, right? Because I think
no,
it's terrible. My best way of making coffee is the French press. French press, excellent, very easy. Very economical, and it really helps you with the coffee. Get the flavor of the coffee.
So I paid for college for grad school working as a barista. I worked for a private coffee company and then ended up working for Starbucks because they offered insurance even at part-time. Cool. I was even a Black Apron coffee master at Starbucks back when they still did that. I don't think they do that anymore as a program. And so I can appreciate a good coffee. I still do the Keurig just because it's just me. So I'm only making like 10 ounces at a time. And so I don't have the commitment to sit and wait for it to brew to make that much or to do the French press and wait for it to steep.
Gotcha.
I ended up giving
away the time though. If you did have the time,
absolutely.
what would you do? Okay. Excellent.
The one that got me though is when I was going to grad school, I started working at the coffee shop at Villanova. It's Holy Grounds Cafe. Villanova is on a functioning monastery, so Holy Grounds is a kind of play on words because it is on a monastery, right? And so when I transferred from there, one of my trainers at the new site, she was Cuban American. She was there because her husband was going to get a master's in biomedical engineering so he could get into med school because straight out of bachelor's degree was hard. And so we were friends because, when you're a young married couple, like you want to be friends with other young married couples because if you start going out with the singles, sometimes that can create tension. And so we went to her house one day where she fed us and she made me Cuban coffee, and I could swear I could hear colors and see sound by the time I was done.
You could see the future.
Right. Like I was like, It was my heart probably would kill me if I tried to drink that on a regular basis, but it was delicious.
Oh, great. Excellent.
And I've heard the same thing about Turkish coffee, but there's a whole process where they like do it with the sand and they heat it up. And like, I want to try all of that. There's a guy in Japan. It's the oldest running coffee shop in Japan. And he has one of the coffees that he does that steeps for like 20 to 50 years. And you're spending $25 to get a teaspoon to taste it if you wanted to buy it just to sample it. But I've seen some videos where people will go do tastings and they're swearing up and down it was worth the price.
Wow.
So that's one of those things you want to bucket list just so you can say you did.
Sure. Absolutely. Like Kobe steak, right? Like what was
right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, when it comes down to it, like I'm a middle class kind of guy with my taste, but I want to try something at least once.
What about caviar? That's the one that people always say, even though
I have tried that and did not like it.
Okay.
I've tried oysters, didn't like that either.
Okay. So I'm not missing out.
Yeah, no, not really. I've done haggis when I was playing the pipes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, no, I understand why my ancestors fought a lot because if you had to eat that, you'd be angry too. Sorry, Grandma, if you're listening. Yeah, that was, yeah. It's one of the things I liked about traveling around, being a military family and meeting other people that were from all over too. Because wherever there's a military base, there's generally international presence. Is trying foods from everywhere. And when I was as an undergrad, I took a class about the history of food and cultural of food. And you realize that most of what we in America think is Mexican food or Chinese food or insert race food, it's largely overly sweetened, but it's also festival food. And so the professor that taught it was like the equivalent would be if someone from Mexico City thought that Americans had their Thanksgiving meal every meal.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Right. Like most of what we're eating is the stuff they don't have on a regular basis. On most of the time, like real Thai food, it's just grilled chicken and rice and vegetables. It's not all this sweet glaze that adds thousands of calories. Right. And so you learn to appreciate that applies to coffee too. Like they've all got their own way to do it.
Of course.
I've made this joke before. I wonder what America would have been like if they hadn't had the tax on tea and we'd thrown it into Harbor. Would we still be a tea country like Great Britain?
Right.
Or would we still have pivoted to coffee?
Yeah, no, it would be tea. That's my guess. Yep.
Yeah, that's the thing that amused me the heck out of me when we were in, and there's no way we're keeping this to an hour. I can already see the time, but I'm having fun. And we're going to pimp your stuff next. But I really liked the Brits would always stop in the middle at noon. They would stop for tea. And I'm like, dude, you realize it's a desert. It's 140 degrees outside. And I've talked to doctors since I got home, and they're like, no, drinking warm stuff in the heat is actually better for you. Because if you drink something that's super cold, like it causes a shock reaction.
Yes, very true. Yes,
but when I was hot like that, I'm like, the last thing I wanted was boiling water.
I know. And you wouldn't think it, but it is true. I have a Moroccan colleague, and he proved the point to me once. Exactly. During the hot summer, just drinking some. It quenches your thirst. It does something about your thirst that I think was really fascinating.
Have you had him make you any of his coffee? The way Moroccans make coffee?
Oh, yes.
Oh, my goodness. It's delicious.
Yes. It really is. It's got such a. What I remember distinctly, JR, was how velvetily it felt, if that's a word. It like this.
Yeah, it was smooth and rich, but it felt very earthy the way they prepared it. But it was a lot more grounds heavy. Like
correct. Yeah,
and they let it steep a little bit more. I think I don't know. The flavor was so strong. There had to be. I mean, you almost had to have steeped it longer.
Yeah. But it's great. I could see. I could see that would be my jam if I was always around it. Absolutely, it's excellent.
Yeah, I mean, it was hot enough when we were over there. So just as a point of reference, we would stick our cans of travel cups of cup of noodle soup that they were selling back in the day.
Right.
This is before they had the pop tops for everything. This was like a special marketed gimmick. We would get those for our meals because MREs, you can only eat those so often before your stomach revolts. And we would just stick the MREs in a container on the side, or the soup. We built a little crate that was supposed to be for the jerry can. Okay. We just moved the jerry can and we put our soups there. So the ambient heat would heat it to the point where it was edible, like you'd stuck it in a microwave. It would get that hot. Wow. In fact, it was hot enough when I was there that the asphalt would re-liquefy. If you stood in place too long, you would sink.
That is nuts, man.
Yeah. So, and then
burn your tongue.
Yeah, and the idea that in the middle of all of that, they're drinking hot tea just still blows my mind.
Yeah. Yep.
But all right, so I'm going to show the commercial real quick. Which is the video for your Kickstarter, because that's what's sponsoring this episode. And then we're going to come back and talk about it.
Excellent. Thanks, JR.
My name is Eddie Lema, and I'm the creator of End of Zed, a project I've been working on for years. The story follows a robot who crash lands in the Bronx in 1982, severely damaged and with no memory, as he navigates one of the city's most turbulent times, shaped by the rise of the crack epidemic. He also discovers the powerful, positive force of hip-hop.
Where am I? Party people, are we ready? 3, 2, 1.
End of Zed isn't just another comic. It fuses the rebellious energy of New York City with a gripping dystopian narrative. This story delivers visually striking action and powerful themes. If you're into bold, unapologetic storytelling, then the End of Zed is for you. By backing this project, you're not only helping bring Zed's story to life, but you'll gain access to exclusive rewards. I can't wait for all of you to experience Zed's world. Back my project today and become part of this amazing journey.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. With that out of the way, let's dive right in. So let's talk about this Kickstarter. Where did the premise for the universe of Zed come from? Like, where was the genesis for this idea?
Yeah, it was always in my head as a little kid, growing up. I live in Westchester County, which is a suburb of New York. And being so close to the Bronx and Manhattan and everything, we were always connected to it. And I know whenever I would go there, this is exactly the time period of when I created this story. And my fascination for robots, I think, is what started the germ of the idea that I've been thinking about ever since as a little kid, And one of the things that really helped me was I always found it fascinating that a little bit, people think I'm a little weird for saying this, but there were times when I was younger that I would imagine like an alien being with me, and he would ask me to explain the world around me. He said, "Well, where are these people going?" Well, that's a traffic jam. They're all going to work. Well, why do they need to go to work? Well, they need to make a living. Why do they need to make a living? Well, they have family, they have homes. So I always envisioned like what it would look like for some kind of alien being or robot that would come to this Earth and kind of ask around to what's what. So that was the germ of the idea. End of Zed's a story about a robot who crash lands in 82 in the South Bronx, and he's got no memory, and he's badly damaged. And he has to navigate through really one of the most turbulent time in the city's history. In 82, that saw the beginnings of the crack epidemic, but also saw the positive side of the hip hop culture coming into play, which ushered in new music, new fashion, as well as new art. So that's what he has to navigate through. He has to, he'll eventually uncover his origins and see how he's connected to this world, but will also ultimately find out what his purpose is. So the idea started there, and then I just took it as I got older, got more mature. I wanted to write a story about basically programming and what happens if a robot lands here with a blank programming, and what's it filled with and how is it filled. So it makes for a fascinating story, especially with that backdrop, the backdrop of the city.
And by going it when you did, you ended up like avoiding some of the plot limiting factors of like the technology with the cell phone, where you can just instant communication with everybody, track their location.
Yes.
Like you've got room for mystery there.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I can see it. So before we get too deep into this, what would you say the age range for this story is?
I would say it's certainly with, between teenage all the way up to 60. I don't think anyone below 14, 13 could probably connect with it. There isn't violence or anything. There's a gang fight he sees, but you don't see anything graphical. But yeah, I would say around that age, from 16 up would be a good range.
Okay. Normally we'd ask you the elevator pitch, but I think you did that with the video. So obviously not all comic book artists or creators that we've had come to us were the artists. Some of them write the dialogue and they outline the story, but they don't do the art. What was your role in the creation of this one? Were you telling the story and hiring out the artist, or did you draw it yourself?
Yeah, I'm an artist, but I'm not a sequential artist. And I knew that once I created this, that I would need the help of a professional comic book artist, that specifically one with sequential art. So that really helped with the story, because in my head, what my vision was, I was really, really concrete, and really, I decided exactly what my vision would be. So it would help that I could actually sketch and draw it and actually give it to the sequential artist to do. So I wrote it, and I also basically did the whole storyboard of the layout, did the character design, for example. That took me about 4 months. Character design was super important because I needed a character that needed to be vulnerable, kind of like childlike qualities. That's why he has like a really big head and a smaller body. I also knew that he couldn't be very technologically advanced, because there is a connection to Earth that you're going to find out later when you read the other issues. And also, he needed to look, he could not, I didn't want him to look very sophisticated. I didn't want him coming down looking like Voltron, So there's a lot of thought that went into that. And thankfully my artistic background really helped with that. And I'm also a graffiti artist too, JR. And that also helped too, because the story takes place all in one night. And so since it takes place at night, lighting as well as colors had to be super important to the story. So I was grateful that I really got to work with some really talented artists on
that. Given that we're close in age, close-ish.
Yeah.
Were you inspired at all by like the movie like Short Circuit or RoboCop that were coming out at the time when you were younger?
Of course. Well, Star Wars, back to the original question, right, JR? I always had a fascination with robots and droids, and even his character design is very reminiscent to like a stormtrooper. His his black and white colors. So yeah, it's certainly influenced by it, and certainly influenced by robots. I like Short Circuit; it was great, but I thought it was a little too campy. I wanted to make sure that my comic wasn't too campy. Certainly wanted to make it as realistic as I could. As realistic as a sci-fi a story I could make. That's really what my goal was.
So you used a term that I'm not familiar with. What do you mean by sequential art for people that aren't into comic books necessarily?
Well, I'm great at drawing anything. Like you give me a picture of you, I can actually draw it, illustrate it, I could charcoal it. But if you wanted me to draw you in like 5 or 6 different angles, I could not do it. It would take me a very long time to do. I could do it, but eventually it would take me like 5 months to do something. That's where sequential artists can come in. They can conceptualize, they can see an image, or like in this case, my robot and my initial sketches, and because of their talent, they can show you, and they can actually draw him or whatever subject you need in all these different kinds of positions and all these different kinds of scenes. So a sequential artist is essential when you're drawing a comic book. That's one of the reasons why AI, right? AI looks amazing, but AI is having a real hard time making things sequential. Because you could give it the prompt to give you a superhero, and you can give it a very specific look, and it could look amazing. But try telling AI to draw that character that you created in the AI in a scene, and it would be virtually impossible. At this point, it's getting better. Trust me, I'm sure it'll perfect it within a year. But as of now, it's really hard in terms of sequential art. So that's I'm in awe with these artists, especially these sequential artists, sequential comic book artists that can do that.
So when you draw for the comic, are you doing old school pen and paper, or are you doing some sort of digital drawing on a tablet kind of deal that some people are moving to?
Yeah, I would say both, but more so I'm kind of going more towards the digital. I mean, how can you not? I mean, it's I'll draw something, and then okay, I want this particular character in the next scene. It's easy just to copy and paste and bring it over. You can't deny that, the efficiency of that. So yes, but there is also nothing like your pen and paper and pencil and pad. Also, just the texture and the feel of it too. So I would say a little of both, but I'm certainly leaning more towards the digital side of things.
Okay. So when you do your drawing and you started this comic book, did you know exactly where the entire story is going to go, or do you just outline it issue to issue?
No, no, I knew exactly where it's going to go. You know what I do, JR? Every year for the last 5 years, I take on a new project that I know nothing about. And what I do is I make a goal. I say, I'm going to start this project in the beginning of January and I'm going to finish it in December. And I need a metric to prove my success. So one year, I am a graffiti artist, but as such, I never did it in the digital world. So one year I said, I'm going to open up an Instagram account and I'm going to take all my graffiti art and make it digital. So I did. I had never really been on social media before. I opened up my Instagram account, and my goal, my metric was I need to reach 1,000 organic followers, and then I'll give myself the thumbs up. I did it. So what I did was the whole year I transferred my regular traditional art into graffiti art, and it was amazing. Went over the 1,000 mark, met some amazing people, amazing culture, and I was done. So the second year, within that first year, I actually drew a couple of panels for this comic book that I'm working on now. I said, I'm going to concentrate on writing a screenplay. Never did it before, but I'm not going to be able to take classes, but I'm certainly going to go on YouTube. I'm going to school myself. I read a couple of great books. My favorite one is Save the Cat, which teaches you about character arcs and the the 3-act play, 3-act structure. And so for the full year, I wrote the screenplay of this End of Zed. And so once I finished that, I had the screenplay in my hand. Okay, mission accomplished. What am I going to do for the following year? It was too much money to make a movie of, that's for sure. It's certainly too much money for an animation. But then I said, this would make an excellent comic book. And so I worked with an editor to transfer the screenplay over to a comic book screenplay, which is completely different. And then, that's what we've been doing all year. And our goal was to have a comic book in our hand by the end of the year. And this is where we are now with End of Zed. First Kickstarter. It's going great so far. We got way over 30 more days to kind of get it done. And we'll see how it goes. The feedback has been amazing. People love the story. It's something they kind of never seen before. And certainly it's got a built-in audience with those, who love the 80s, love those who love science fiction, those who love, let's say, hip hop. So all these things, they all connect to it. I'm starting to build an audience on it, which is really exciting.
So obviously you've got to back it in order to fund it. You're requesting that's $1,500 and you're a third of the way there already, with 33 days to go. So you got a little over a month to get it. What are you looking? Are you looking just to fund back the money you spent on doing the art? Is it already done? Or are you going to create it once you get the funding?
So the comic book is done. Yeah, it's all drawn, it's all illustrated, it's all colored, lettering done, everything's done. So that $1,500 is going towards the printing. And if there's anything left over, it'll go towards the second issue. So yes, really excited that, that everything had to be done in time before I started to even think of a Kickstarter. And we also have the screenplay, which is going to give us 3 more issues that we're going to take off, that we're going to actually make after this one. So the whole thing's going to be a 4-issue set.
And who did your actual art then? Aside from, obviously you did some of it, but who did your sequential art?
Yeah, well, I did all the graffiti art. So when you're in like, for example, we did a variant cover, and I did it with my graffiti tag that I did. Had another artist do the character. But my main artist for the whole comic book, his name is Lucas Assis. He's a Brazilian artist. And then the colorist is one of his colleagues that he works with called G. Sabino. And he's the colorist for it. So those are my 2 main artists. And then my editor is Brian Zanzanago. And then I also have someone helping me with the media aspect of promoting it. And his name is Matt Seeger. And let me not forget my letterer, who's so talented, Matthias Zanetti. So yes, I could not have done it without the team. It's kind of hard, JR. I don't know if you ever worked on a project and it's certainly close to you, but you also have to collaborate with other people. And it's kind of hard. You have your vision, right? And you certainly want to make sure that you reach your vision. But to work with other people, you kind of got to let go, right? Let go to make this collaboration work. So it took me a little while to learn to let go, but I'm glad I did, because I think the comic came out amazing.
Okay. So do you plan on using the same team for future novels for continuity of story?
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, because it's a great team to work with. They know how to work with me at this point, which sometimes isn't an easy thing, you know. But yeah, we all work great together. So absolutely, I couldn't see doing this without them.
So how did you find your sequential artist who sounds like linked you with everyone else?
Yes, well, I really I vetted a lot of artists. It took me about a good 2 months to really find him, and just Instagram. Yeah, he popped up on Instagram. We had a conversation, and then took over from there. You know, my story takes place all in one night, so all 4 issues are going to take place in one night. So, having an artist that really could work with colors well, as well as work with lighting, was certainly important to me. So that's one of the reasons why. Another good reason why I work with both of them, these Brazilian artists.
Okay. With the story, I know comic books, I think you deserve it by pages, right? So how many pages are in this issue?
28 pages for this issue. Yep.
So it's a little bit longer than the standard 25.
Correct. Yep.
Are you going to be selling this digitally?
Yes, I'm ready. Yeah, great question, JR. Actually, I signed on with a distributor already, ASAP Imagination, and Any One World. So they're going to take care of my digital distribution, and that'll start by the end of this year, or no later than the beginning of January. So I already have that set up once the Kickstarter is over.
And are you going to be going into things like Comixology or Drive-Thru Comics as well?
Well, I gotta say, really, the goal of this certainly isn't to make money. It's to build my audience, to see what audience is out there, to see how much it resonates with them, and to kind of see that they want more. And thank goodness I'm already starting to feel, especially the first day. I've only been on 2 days, and we already reached, 30% of our goal out of a couple of days us being on. So that's certainly a good indication of all the hard work that we did marketing this thing beforehand. Because that's certainly very important in this day and age that you have to market it. And we went to a lot of cons, handed out a lot of flyers. And so it's good to see that everything is coming to fruition. We're getting there.
Well, since we talked about the art, I figured it'd be appropriate to kind of show us. So this is the cover. So this is the level of detail of the art, which I think is really good. It works when you're colorblind too, so I'm digging it. I like the shoes over the line. Used to see that a lot back in the day, not so much really anymore.
Right. It's the 80s, so it had to be there.
Yeah, I like the way you did the Zed typography.
Yep. I did that. Appreciate that, yeah.
Obviously the light in the center, that's like what, his power core?
Yeah, and that's going to come into play. Yeah, it's going to come into play in terms of, that's going to be a very important part to the story. Yeah, and then he's battered and damaged, as you can see. A lot of this idea I got for the cover was, do you remember the movie Fugitive with Harrison Ford?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you remember the DVD cover and the VHS covers, for those who don't know what VHS covers, we'll explain that to you later. But there was this is actually how the cover looked. It was like, Harrison Ford is running, he's looking behind him, and it creates this sense of, what's he running from? And, in our case, he's running from time, as you'll learn from the story. And by the way, on my website, www.endofzed.com, you can actually download the first 5 pages of this comic. So try before you buy, and you get a good sense of the story.
It's reminding me, I can't remember. It's giving me a vibe from a comic I read as a kid about, it's from a video game.
I've heard Metroid is one.
Metroid, yeah. That's what I was trying to find.
Yeah, Metroid. Yeah.
When I did Metroid, it kept giving me Meteor Man, but that's not it. Yeah, it's Metroid.
Right. Metroid, yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah. Nothing's influenced by Metroid there. If anything, Stormtrooper, right? You can see the white and the black, and that's very calculated too. Again, I knew that he had to, be running around a lot of dark scenes, so that nothing gives you such great contrast as a white suit, especially when color reflects on it, and everything is well thought out. Even again, his look, he doesn't look like something super sophisticated, but you'll find out in terms of what his origin is and how that connects.
And you've got the iconic little bubble
That's it.
thing on the top that you saw in all robots back in the day.
Yes, that's exactly it.
And then, so it's definitely colorblind approved. I can see most of what's going on here, the way you did the coloring. I like the contrast that the moon is giving you.
Yes, I love it too. And the composition is just amazing. Yeah, the contrast. Yeah.
And then this is a sample of some of the art. You don't really know what's going on because this is just what's on the Kickstarter page, so no spoilers, but to sort of see the quality. This is now the same robot from the back. You got the continuity with the earpiece that's broken, though, which I really like.
Sure. And actually, that's you can get that's part of the first 5 pages of the story. So I actually could tell you what's going on here.
Okay.
So when he lands on Earth, he has a CPU on him, and what's great about the CPU, it kind of goes back to the story I was telling you about. If I was with an alien, I had to explain him what the world was. This computer does the same thing. So when he first comes, he's in the South Bronx. It's 1982, beginning of the crack epidemic, and the first human that he sees is really like a junkie that's in a telephone booth. And the computer shines on him. The computer tells him this is a human being. They're the dominant species on this planet. They're intelligent and this and that. He starts saying, "Wow, this dude really is." And then a person comes up to him, and you see a drug deal go down, and the computer will go on the currency, for example, on the money, and the computer will end up telling him, "Well, yeah, this is currency. This is how humans trade goods and so forth." And then it'll concentrate on the crack veil, and the computer tells him, "Well, this is a hallucinogen. This is a drug that takes humans to another level." And so he starts judging this because remember, he's got no memory. He has no idea why he's here. And he starts saying to himself, "Oh my goodness, how could a human do this to another human being?" So out of curiosity, he follows him. And remember, his vision isn't very well, and he follows him into a crack house. And when he goes in here, he sees these individuals that look very zombie-like. And they're not zombies, but in his eyes, they look like it because they're really crack addicts, unfortunately. And so he sees this Earth. He's learning about humans, and he's coming to his own perception of what this wild place that he's in. At the end of the day, I really wanted this JR to be a talk, really give us a lesson about programming and how it is that I want us to think about how were we programmed when we were younger. Certainly when we were younger, our parents helped us to figure out the ethics of this world. They probably explained to us what we were viewing, and then of course as we got older, the media did, right? The media told us what we were looking at. But somewhere in life, we have to kind of make our own minds of what we're seeing. So that's what this is here. Zed is really learning from this, from not only a computer standpoint, but from what he's seeing in his eyes.
Okay. And so in the age before the internet, how is his computer telling him this stuff?
Excellent. Well, that connects to really his origins and really the purpose of why he's here. Another thing that happens too, JR, is that as soon as he comes down, there's a timer that ticks off, and it gives him like 4 hours, and he doesn't know why. He doesn't know what this timer is and why it's ticking down. And so that also, there are things that play that as you read along, you're going to find out that there's a connection to why he's here. One person explained it to me very well. You know that movie Wild Robot that's out now in the theaters? Yeah. Right. So this is Wild Robots meets The Warriors. If you remember that movie, The Warriors, that's what this is. Yes, where the Warriors had to go from one place to another, and they had the whole city after them. Same thing here. It's Wild Robot meets The Warriors.
Okay, and we'll give you some more of the art. So you see some of the details like the pixelation. You can see his visor. Definitely the hip hop vibe going on here.
Sure.
I really do like the colors of this.
Amazing colors, absolutely. And the contrast between the colors against black backgrounds, right? Like where he says, "What's this?" and he's got the blue thing that as he's speaking is glowing. It had to be super important that these colors popped off from a black background.
And the border with the oranges and whites, I like too.
Yeah, I created it. I'm trying to create like a computer programming that's kind of going awry, and and time is running out. Yeah, that's the mode I tried to set for the Kickstarter, because I have all those borderlines in my Kickstarter too. Thanks for noticing that. Boy, you got some eye, JR. That's excellent.
And this one is almost like a picture layered over a picture.
Yeah.
But I like the scene here with the Dark Knight with the Twin Towers.
Yes.
Man, that'll take you back.
Absolutely. You see that, and that's how the comic opens. You see that, you know what time period you're in, especially if you're from New York, those towers were some sight, some sight.
And you got
That's
the
it.
coloring. I dig it.
Yep. Nope. And this is him
It
coming
definitely
down.
it definitely feels like an 80s vibe to
Yes.
the art style.
Appreciate that. Absolutely. Yeah. And you know what's interesting about this scene, JR, is that he lands in this complete desolation. And in a couple of my test runs that I gave a couple of the first pages to, a lot of people complain, like, Eddie, he wouldn't land in the city, there'd be no one there. Like, that's so unrealistic. Well, the South Bronx in 82, they were blocks and blocks of desolation, just like this. No exaggeration. Look it up, 1982 South Bronx. Look it up on YouTube, and you'll see exactly it was like that. So it's kind of cool of how this is also very historical too.
This before they cleaned up Hell's Kitchen too.
That's it. There you go. Absolutely.
Yep. Gives you lots of room to play if you're doing it. I like this, the look of the robot. The fact that he doesn't have 4 fingers and a thumb, he's just got 3. And the thumb makes it feel non-human, but still human in a way that doesn't quite cross the uncanny valley.
Correct. There you go.
I like the way the fire is popping. You can see the little plop of the rain hitting the fire, and you get those. And if you've ever seen a fire out in the rain, that's what it looks like too.
That's
so
it. Excellent.
I dig it.
The water dripping from his visor, and
this is another scene. I'm just zooming in, dear listener. If you're listening audio only, I definitely think it's worth clicking the Kickstarter link so you can see the art, because that's where I got this from. This is the robot following, like he talked about. It's just all in color now. So I'm just giving you a sample, and obviously the Kickstarter is only I got a month left, and it's a $1,500 is the goal. So I definitely recommend you checking that out. All right, so we've talked about the art, obviously, and we've gone a little bit about the story. Is this just the story of one robot in the larger world, or are there other main characters that come into play?
There'll be a major one that comes into play after the second one. Yeah, absolutely. That's going to shape his mentality, shape his, again, he's getting all this programming from the CPU, but also what he's experiencing. And he's going to come up to some conclusions of what he thinks about Earth and Earthlings. And he's going to start to react to those conclusions. So there's going to be other characters, but one in particular that's going to shape his programming. And then, of course, you're going to find out why that timer was on him. You'll end up finding out there is a connection between him and where he came from. And then there's twists at the end. I can't wait to get to it. It really is. It's certainly a simple story in the sense that, like I was telling you before, JR, certainly everything is derived, right? There's nothing new under the sun. But in the manner of the way of things happen to him, I think it's pretty unique. And I really appreciate it. And I think the audience will as well.
Yeah. And so what can you tell us about, obviously he starts with a blank slate, essentially, a tabula rasa. I'm probably butchering that. I haven't seen that word since school, but he starts with the blank slate, right? And so he has no personality. And that's a common trope when it comes to machines or people in general waking up from a coma. They did it in Fifth Element, if you remember.
Yep.
With the Fifth Element. And so the chick with the cool costume. Yeah. Lilo, what is it by doing it that way? Is there a reason you did it that way as far as a plot point to explore larger issues, or did you do it simply because it's just needed to the plot? Like, are you teaching some larger message? And I'm not talking about message fiction and like you're preaching morality, but is it part of a larger theme in the story that you're starting with him having a blank slate?
Yes, it's programming. That's exactly what I'm trying to kind of convey to people. Of hopefully they'll see, how is he being programmed living in this time that has something super negative and super positive in it, right? Where does he draw his conclusions from? Who is he drawing these? How is he making what's he learning from? Which source is he learning from in terms of information? Is he learning more from his experience than he is from the CPU that's telling him things? Eventually, he will connect with his headquarters. And what are they telling him about Earth? And how are they manipulating his program? And really, what was he originally intended to come here for, right? So in my bigger part of the story, I want us to think in terms of how we were programmed. How was it that we came to be the person that we are today? What was it that shaped and molded our ethics and our views on certain things? And, hopefully they were solid sources, right? Hopefully they were solid sources, like people that you can trust. Could the media have maybe manipulated you to feel a certain way about certain people or a certain process, let's say? So it's really that's what I find very fascinating to think about. No memory, a blank slate. How does it get filled, right? And more importantly, can you have the ability to step back and go, okay, can I really see why I'm thinking about this particular thing the way that I'm thinking about, right? And so I think living through his eyes and seeing this, you can kind of get the message of that. Now, there's no message to this. What everyone thinks is, certainly they have their right in terms of how they were programmed, and that's not really the question. The question is, can you question what it is, how you feel about certain things? And so through his journey, he will have to come to grips with that. He'll come to grips with why his origin's here. He'll come to grips with his purpose. And let's just say, again, without spoiling anything, let's say that he's down here for a nefarious reason. Can he come through with it now, knowing everything that he learned about Earth and so forth? So
you also have that larger existential question is, what does it mean to be you? Because at some level, like, everyone will ask you that iconic question, like, if you could do it over again, and would you do anything different? And on the one hand, like, if you had something that was a horrible mistake, it's kind of convenient to say, sure, I'd if I went left instead of right, we wouldn't have crashed, and Jimmy wouldn't have died or whatever. But on the flip side of that is, we're all a product of the collection of the choices we've made. Sure. So like, we're the sum of a part. So if we change that, are we still us? And then who are you if you wipe your memory, right? Like that.
That's great. Yeah.
And they've done some research from a psychological angle. Like, they've done research on people who've legitimately had amnesia, not the kind that fake it to get out of, whatever plot, but like legitimate amnesia. Mm-hmm. And they've reported drastic personality shifts because you don't have the grounding, the deep roots into who you are as a thinking moral person. Sure. Do you explore those deeper themes as well when you're talking about Zed, not having any memories?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And because it's interesting of how much you said it so perfectly, JR, we are a product of our experiences, of everything we went through. But if you have no memory, then what are you basing it on? What are you clinging on to kind of give you those answers of life, And in some cases, it could be dangerous, right? It could be very dangerous where we're getting our intel from. We'll put it that way, and it's something worth questioning.
You stripped out the one thing that can counteract that, in that it's a machine, because like the Jason Bourne, right? He has muscle memories, because if you do something often enough, you can start to do it in your sleep without thinking about it, because your body just knows.
Correct.
I mean, there's a reason you've got some pretty funny videos where you'll take like World War II or Vietnam machine gunners and snipers, and they haven't touched a weapon since they left the war zone, and suddenly they're back with a unit, in modern times. There's an iconic one where it's a World War II sniper, and he gets behind a modern rifle, and with just one walkthrough, he's able to, plink steel again, because muscle memory, he doesn't have to think about it.
Sure.
And they've done the same thing with some of the machine gunners from World War II and Vietnam, and suddenly they're using the modern, although the modern stuff isn't that different. But the idea is, you haven't touched it for 30, 40, 50, 60, 80 years, right? And you can still pick it up like it was yesterday. And that muscle memory holds true. It's the reason why every athletic endeavor, you do it over and over and over again.
Sure. Muscle memory. It's like golf, right?
And that's why anytime you're doing martial arts, you're doing sports, in the military, they tell you've got to get to the point where you don't think. Because if you don't think, you don't have time to be afraid.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
And that applies to sports too. Like, I remember my coach, my first year playing rugby, was like, Handley, you're avoiding the hit, stop passing. And I passed one more time, because if you in rugby, you don't hit you can't sack the person without the ball, right? You can only tackle the person with the ball. And it got to the point where he got so fed up, he's like, Handley, you're not ever allowed to pass. You just got to take the hit. And it got to be the point where I forgot I could pass as a senior when I'm playing 4 years later. He's like, you know, you can pass now, right? I'm like,
you know, you can pass that.
Used to it, right? But like that memory is if you don't think, you don't have time to, oh man, it's gonna hurt when I sack that guy. It's gonna hurt when I do this high kick and I, you know, extend my muscle, whatever. Like you don't think about those things because you don't have time to think, which means you don't have time to psych yourself out.
Right.
But when you're talking about a robot, what does muscle memory look like in a robot that has no memory? It's essentially been wiped clean because it doesn't have the biology angle, right?
That's great. I never even thought of that. That's good, JR. Excellent. You're right. You're right. Absolutely.
So you haven't thought about it yet, but the readers, when you read it, you can tell us what you think, and it'll be incorporated in the next story.
That's right. Exactly. Not well, you know, in terms of muscle memory and things like that. It's more just, you know, I certainly thought about what it would be like to have no memory, right? Like, do you know what fear is, right? And this is where it gets primal, right? And yes, a robot.
Absolutely.
In my world, a robot can get primal, you know. And again, it goes back to his character design. You know, I needed to paint, you know, a sense of vulnerability, that he was a kid that was lost, you know, a fish out of water story, you know. And yeah, a lot of that's by having no memory, you know. In terms of taking it, like how did he work physically, you know, without memory and stuff like that. That I guess is just instinct, I guess. Like you said, muscle memory. And there is connections that he has to here to Earth, so maybe that's where it kicks in, you know. But that's great.
And I do wonder, I mean, like, that one of the things you learned with Katrina, with what's that one hurricane that flooded parts of New York, where there's actually
Sandy, of like Sandy.
Yeah, where they get the video of like a large, I don't know if it was AI or what, but it was a shark swimming in the subway or something because it flooded.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I mean, it was before AI was prevalent. I don't know if it was like a Photoshop deal or not. I just remember seeing the photos. It's been years, but like, I was going somewhere with this. Oh yeah, so you're 3 days away from going caveman because, you know, without the modern conveniences, it's not like stores nowadays have huge warehouses in the back where they store things. They literally have 3 days worth of supplies. If you can't get resupplied at 3 days, you got no food, right? And so the idea of civilization is a veneer that is very easy to strip away.
Yeah.
And when you get to the more primal part, I do feel like, and this is not science because obviously we can't test this, but there's at some level you go back to like almost ancestral memory, like, you know, certain things because you just know. And it's probably because the people that had that reaction didn't get eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, so they went on to spread their genes, and it's more a product of selective breeding necessarily than true, you know, ancestral memory like you see in some Aliens in various franchises. Mm-hmm. But again, when he comes back to it, what does that look like as a robot that doesn't have that? It's not truly alive in the strictest organic sense.
Correct. And no, it's fascinating thinking. You know, it's, you know, and that's why I love robots, right? R2D2, C3PO. You know, I'm very sure I love the technology of them, but I also like their human spirit. That even though R2D2 did not say exact words, through his beeps and through his cooing and through his head spinning, he took on these human qualities that endeared me to him, and really a majority of all the audience that was endeared to R2D2. You know, to this day, so influenced by him of not even knowing, not even saying any particular words, but yet through these gestures, you fell in love with the little dude.
It's the same reason people like Chewbacca.
Yeah, there you go. Good point. Yeah.
You know, I mean, in theory, they're both talking. You just don't understand it.
Right. There you go. Correct.
It's C3PO. Could understand R2D2, and Han could understand Chewbacca, but you, the reader, you, the viewer, didn't get that interface, which meant you had no clue what he was saying.
Right, good point.
And that sense of strangeness. And I know, like, I've seen people that write combat scenes, for instance, where everything is chaotic and it's kind of hard to follow, but it doesn't detract because real life is like that. It adds to the, you know, the prestige, the ambiance. I think you can get some of that with the robots too.
Yeah.
So did you go with it's a sentient robot? Have you obviously, you know, but I mean, is that something you figure out in the first issue?
Yeah, towards the end you do. And that's one of the things I'm a little, you know, kind of worried about, in the sense that in the first, a lot of it's set up for the first issue, but a lot of really what goes on in terms of really getting deep of who Zed is and what kind of robot he is, it will get covered more in the later issues. So hopefully we'll get to that point where the audience will be able to see it,
So
I think we will. I think we will.
Is that an acronym for something that stands for something? Is it a shortened of a name, or is that just his name? Like, where does Zed come from?
Yeah, well, in the story, you end up finding out that there was more than one, and so Alpha, Beta, and he's named Zed for a reason, because he was somewhat
The end of line.
right, somewhat of the final solution to things. So yeah, without giving away too much, yeah. So Zed,
Yeah, absolutely.
There's certainly significance to his name. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Now, when you were reading, about robots and watching them, were you influenced at all by Isaac Asimov's iRobot? That kind of concept of the rules of robotics that you'd have to create to protect you from the machines?
Right, correct. I was, yeah, and that comes into play with Zed also, and also it's gonna sound silly. What was the one with Scarlett Johansson? Her or she, the one? It was about the AI thing where Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with her, and she's an AI basically, and though she's not a robot, she is AI, and how she's learning and how they fall in love. A lot of how you're learning how AI basically is that as time is going on, it just keeps learning and keeps compounding what it learns. I was influenced by that a lot too. I don't know why I can't think of it. I think it's called Her, the one Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson plays the voice of the AI.
Since you love robotics, I'm going to put this invitation out to you. We are actually going to be reviewing in season 5. We're going to record it in January. A movie review for the movie Megan.
Oh, cool.
Have you seen that commercials for that or seen the movie?
No, but I've seen the commercial. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
That's as a parent who's like, yeah, I might get the cool. Okay, I'm not getting the toys for my kids. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like when you watch that, like, so yeah, I haven't seen Her. Do you recommend the movie? We'll
I would. Oh, absolutely. Oh, it's excellent. It takes place where it takes place in the future, and of course, Joaquin Phoenix is in it. So, I'd watch anything with him in it. Oh yeah, and she it takes place in the future, and there's a new iOS that comes out, and it actually is. This is before AI even blew up, and it's a way of how you could talk to a person, basically, because he lived alone and he started to get closer to this person, and he actually kind of fell in love. And it really, not only is it a deeper story about, AI, but even a deeper story about who can you love and can you love something that's not living, and even though they're giving you these emotions that are real, can you do it? So yeah, it's fascinating. Highly recommend it.
There was another one that was a robot movie. I can't remember what it was called. It was like I Am Mother. There we go. That was it. Mm-hmm. Have you seen that one as well?
No. Is it the same premise? Kind of like it kind of sounds like
it's a robot that basically was like the premise is, humanity has been destroyed, and so this robot is in this underground bunker, and it not really clones it, artificially breeds humans in this facility, and then raises it as a robot and kind of starting the process of rebuilding. I can't say more than that because it would be a spoiler.
Sure.
But it's kind of along the same lines of what it means to be human.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that sounds fascinating. I remember the trailer to it, so I know which one.
Yeah, I watched that last year over Thanksgiving. I highly recommend it.
Wow, cool.
So that's one of the cool things, like the concept of robots gives you a lot, and you're actually seeing some of that now in the news. Now, this happened before the Ukraine war started, but I remember a couple of years ago, Russia was working on some robots that were going to be meant for space. They were supposed to be like workers in hostile environments, so they could go out and potentially do some of the repairs where humans wouldn't be put in danger. And it kind of gave... it looked like the stereotypical robot killing machine just because of the limitations of our technology at the moment. And so they thought it would be kind of cool to see if they could put a weapon in its hand and have it shoot a target. It's being controlled. It's not like AI operated. It's just more like a remote control car kind of thing.
Okay. Like an RC.
But of course, it's like shooting an AK because it's Russia, so why not? Suddenly, like all the newspapers, like, oh my God, Putin's sending war robots to the moon, and I'm like, come on, like, got a sense of humor. Like it was obviously the technician was just having some fun.
Yeah, sure.
And so I think robotics, what it means for robots, the intersection of robotics and AI, like I think that's the future of science fiction right now. You're going to see more of those tales, be they pro or anti, cautionary tales, or lauding them as the next best thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to be an interesting thing to see.
Sure.
And every time you think it might solve a problem, you see another problem it creates.
Yeah, sure.
So I took a philosophy class and as an undergrad, and I remember writing an essay to the point where I thought artificial wombs, because they were testing where they cloned a sheep, or they birthed the sheep out of an artificial womb. I don't remember if it was cloned or not, Dolly, and it didn't live long. And I remember thinking, when they perfected that technology, like, you're going to solve the abortion debate, because, well, you don't, if she doesn't want the baby, she doesn't have to keep it, but she doesn't have to kill it. You just remove it, stick it in an artificial womb. It's somebody else's, and there's plenty of childless people. It solves the problem.
Right.
And then, of course, you see the rise of, how do I say this family friendly, mature activity intended robots. And I'm like, okay, well, now you're going the other direction, because now you're isolating people because they have no reason to interact. And so it's like this yin and yang of like, oh, it solves this problem. Okay, now it creates another one. And it's back and forth. And it's just an interesting time to be alive. So the idea that you're writing about robotics, you hit the right time in world history to do that.
And especially with movies like Wild Robot now, and then of course how Elon Musk took out those robots that are with artificial intelligence in them, and so it seems like good timing, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it's hard to know what's real and what's like truly AI and what's human interface hidden, and they're lying to you. Like, it's a weird time, and I think that makes this even more germane. Sure. Obviously, this series, if this goes well, if this issue goes well, you'll do the other 3, and then it's a 4-book arc. You'll wrap it up. Is there any point where you think your next project will also be robots? Is this kind of a theme for you?
I'm certainly fascinated by it, but no, I'm just going to concentrate everything on this one. I don't see it turning into anything else. But then again, life's like that, JR. You have no idea what's coming around the bend, But for now,
I have absolute faith that you're going to get backed. I have absolute faith that you're going to justify going to issue 2, 3, and 4. So after issue 4, does your next project include more robots? Is what I was asking.
Right? No, I don't think so. Because I actually have another one in the back of my head that I like to do after this one, and it's basically a children's book. So, yeah.
Do you always start with the idea of, like, this one had the theme of programming and who's watching the watcher kind of thing, right? Like where the ideas that trained the ideas come from. It's basic Socratic method thinking. If you didn't realize it, the Socratic methods boil down to if this, then that, if that, then what. It's a method of reasoning, and you're essentially going back to the roots, right, of basic philosophy, whether you intended to or not. Do you intend to keep those themes with the next project?
Yes, I would say so. Absolutely. In particular, the one that I'm going to work on next for a children's book. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting. I never heard it explained that way, but that makes sense.
I heard it, and I'm probably. I mean, it's not. I don't know if you look it up, Socratic method, it's going to teach that, but I know part of the Socratic method is the idea that you just ask why. Was it like 5 or 10 times? And if they can't answer at that point in time, they don't understand it.
Okay.
And it's the idea of the root understanding. It's the same idea, like you learn more by teaching a thing than you do by being taught the thing.
Right. Correct.
Because you have to understand it to teach somebody else.
Correct.
And you never see that more than when you have kids ask you questions like, Daddy, why is the sky blue?
Right.
And I'm like, oh crap. Okay, let me look that one up so I can understand. So I can explain it to you. Right. Or this came up in last night that we recorded. You're not going to be listening to it anytime soon, but we did one on religions and speculative fiction, the fictional religions, obviously. And one of the concepts, you think about it if you try to explain religion. So if you understand the Christian faith, explaining the idea of communion, Holy Communion, to a literal 5-year-old who's like, wait, so we're eating them? You know what I mean? Like,
right.
So the idea is when you want to teach the young, you have to truly understand it, which is going to make it even more interesting to see what you do with the children's book. So when you do that, you have to come back.
Okay, excellent. Will do.
All right. Is there anything about the End of Zed that we didn't talk about you feel like we should know before we wrap this up?
No, I think we covered everything. Thanks, JR. I mean, this is a great interview. You covered even things that I didn't even really think about in terms of, robotics in general. So no, I think we covered everything. Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. And obviously the link for the Kickstarter is the sponsor, so it'll be in the show notes. You can check that out. That's what it is. What are the tiers? We forgot that part. So at what levels can they back and what do they get? That would be, I think, a good end cap for this episode.
Sure. So I wanted to keep it simple. It's my first comic. It's my first Kickstarter, my first rewards. I really wanted to keep it. I know a lot of people can get really, complex in terms of what they're offering. So, I certainly have, you can get the PDF version, which is super popular. You can get the printed version. You can get a printed version with my signature on it, in case it becomes a collector's item, and you'll be the first to have it. Of course, you got stickers. That seems to be the main thing that people love is stickers, and I have some really cool stickers with them. Not only from certain scenes of the movie, of the comic, but also I have some hologram stickers, which are really cool. But I think my biggest tier is one that's for $250, and what it is I will place a tag, a graffiti tag, and place it on a subway or place it on a wall. It could be your name, it could be your company's name, it could be your tag name, whatever it is, and it's going to be featured prominently in the comic book. So not only will I, immortalize you forever, and you'll be in the comic book with this tag, but you also get all the printed copies, and you get the PDF versions and things like that. What I did through the year, actually, on my graffiti site, I gave people the opportunity, other writers, to send me their tags, and I actually have those in there already. As a way to pay an homage to my graffiti writer community. And they're simple line tags, but the ones that I'm offering now for this upper tier for $250 is actually, I will draw the full tag, kind of like what's behind me there, a full color tag that will either be placed on the wall or prominently on the subway.
So you mentioned that you're a graffiti artist. So do you mean that's just an art style, or do you actually have art up in New York where you live?
Yeah, it's an art style. So there's a difference between a graffiti writer and a graffiti artist. I'm a graffiti artist, so I take the aesthetic of graffiti, the colors, the contrast, the impact that means so much to me, and I incorporate it within my artwork. A graffiti writer is someone who actually goes on the trains and paints on the walls and things like that. So I don't do that, but I certainly take the aesthetic and the style from that. And I have my day gig is I'm basically an art director, not for my graffiti work, but basically, for graphic design work, making layouts and so forth. But certainly everything I do has a graffiti feel to it and a graffiti theme to it, because that's basically, who I am, and that's what my identity is.
Okay. So where can listeners and viewers at home find you on the wild interwebs if they wanted to check out more about you? And obviously, like I said, the Kickstarter link will be in the show notes.
Excellent. So certainly my website, endofzed.com. There you'll see this journey from conception to completion. I documented everything. I also have 2 Instagram accounts. One is ZNK238. That's my graffiti site. And then the End of Zed on Instagram as well, too. And there you also see the journey of where we came from within this last year and a half.
Okay. I will get that second one because I only have the other one. But that's easy to do. All right. So this is the other part of the interview, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. And that is especially important for debut authors. It's important for comic books just as much as it is for regular novels or an audiobook. So, wherever you're finding your product, generally speaking, there's a review option. If you can't find anything there, start a website, do a YouTube channel, review the things. And I can guarantee you, if you start a YouTube channel reviewing indie comics, you're going to start getting people coming out of the woodwork, sending you free stuff because they want the reviews. Yeah. They are that hard to come by. I am told through market research and having done this podcast for years, comic books and children's books are the hardest things to get reviews of all of them. So, All right. And with that, you can find us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the bits, shoots, the rumbles, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters, the Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. For professional purposes only. Keep all the shenanigans over at Madam Stabby Stab on our Instagram, Twitter, and email, also linked in the Linktree. And finally, you can go to our website, which is over on Spotify. Bunch of gobbledygook. Don't blame us, blame them. But if you go to the Linktree, you can click the link directly. It's no muss, no fuss. And when you get there, for as little as 99 cents a month, you can help keep the lights on. Every penny helps, and we greatly appreciate it. These episodes aren't free to produce. You can support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink until they float away on a river of Java, and then we'll drink the river too, because reasons. Or if you want to support the show and get some of that good coffee yourself, go to Coffee Brand Coffee. Link is in the show notes. Podcast Grunts is the code. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. And it's an American company making and roasting the beans here. It is not a drop shipping operation. They do ship to the entire United States, to include Hawaii and Alaska. If you are in Canada or the EU, unfortunately, while they can't ship with you, I would encourage you to instead shop local. Better for you, better for the environment, better for your community. It's a win-win, people. And with that, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my absentee and crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thank you for coming on. I know I promised you an hour, but we were having way too much fun, and since this is your debut production, we want people to know who you are, so then they can go spend money and buy your comic book.
Appreciate
Thanks for coming on. This was fun.
Excellent.
As soon as I hit that in button, we're going to upload it. So stay tuned, dear listener. And with that, we are